Hello. I was wondering if I might trouble you for a cup of strong black coffee, and in the process engage you with an anecdote of no small amusement.
Hello and welcome to another episode here at Nerdherder, a very special episode here at Nerdherder.
I feel special.
This is all we're going to do to talk about it. I'm mostly just amazed we've been allowed to get to this point in our podcast career. But this is our 300th episode ever. I've never done something this long, this joyfully. So like I'd like this. I'd like to claim this as my career.
Hang on. You say that.
You excluded.
We've been together for 10 years.
Our marriage is a given. You're a given. You're always the top of the list. It's not fair to put you there. That's like being like, what's your favorite character? Boba Fett. Like
the Bible.
Like, nobody's better than Boba Fett. So it's like, okay, we'll move on. So second best, Anakin. So there you go. So you, Nerdherder podcast.
Okay.
So there you go. Around for 300 episodes. It's a miracle, folks.
Commitment, and it is confusing, just like marriage.
Right. And so in order to celebrate that, we did absolutely nothing. It's content as per usual, because that's what got us to 300, and that's what's going to get us going even further. And so as mentioned, at some point, I think last week's in our call-in special, which thank you, and shout out to Brennan, who's already in the chat, who popped by for that. We just got to hang out with Brennan for an awesome coming soon episode, all about
very awesome
Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and all of that nerdy stuff. It was great. But we are leaning even more heavily this year into the fact that having a podcast for 300 episodes has literally just been an excuse to hang out with our friends.
It's true.
And so
a thinly veiled excuse.
Right. It's just like, you people listen to this, it's just an excuse to hang out. We could just be FaceTiming, but now we're recording it and shipping it to all of your eyes and ears, and you listen for some reason.
It's true.
That's
your problem.
I'm willing to bet it's because we have great friends and great guests, and we're just the lovely accessory that bring them into your homes. And so with that, before we dive into what we're talking about, we have to get our lovely guests in. And so got the familiar favorite, Kev, free from the back room.
You know who he is.
And new to the herd and questioning his life choices, Goose.
It's Goose from Triad.
From Triad of the Force.
What's up?
Yes.
What's up?
Good evening, gentlemen.
So far, so good. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Yes, 3 minutes and 15 seconds in, and we're still.
My hands are. I'm not in the trunk of the car, but my hands have been bound. So we're making it to the trunk
show.
Don't worry.
Spicy.
The chains are abrasive at first, but you get used to them after a while.
You just gotta lube up your wrists, and then.
And I'm telling you right now, man, the combination of slop and fish heads that they slide through the door is. It's an acquired taste, but you just keep acquiring it, and then before you know it, it's a delicacy.
The secret is adobo seasoning.
True.
There you go.
True. Always buy Goya adobo though, but that's.
Oh, absolutely.
we would absolutely serve our prisoners better than that, Kev. You know that.
That's true.
Well, who have you been serving better?
Slim Jims and Mountain Dew. Come on.
Hey, sometimes that gets the job done though.
Wait,
there you go.
Wait, you're telling me someone's getting dew? Because I haven't gotten any dew.
It's Michael.
Michael's
getting due.
It's Michael and Brad and Andy. We have an interesting contest going for most appearances on Nerdherder, and Kev's right up there.
Yep.
We got a long time no see from the Daniel Miller.
Here he hates Trandoshans.
Right. Noted Trandoshan racist Daniel Miller in the chat. Luckily, no Trandoshans in the show we're talking about, because in typical Nerdherder fashion, we decided to wait until everybody on the internet calmed down, at least a little bit, and until we had the finished product to really digest and process. in order to dive in deep. And that's what we've invited you, lovely, beautiful men, to join us to do. Put on the elbow length gloves and let's dive in, because Andor's a deep show.
I don't like that.
I know, I do. Keep going.
This is what happens when J-Dub vamps. Oh gosh.
And when I vamp, Nicolas Cage is involved.
Right. That's
Hey,
true.
you know what? Not for nothing. Renfield looks
My guy.
Looks
brilliant.
ridiculous,
Looks
but
so
in
good.
all the best ways.
Yes.
You know
I like
what?
how everyone's embracing the Nick Cage-ness of Nick Cage finally.
Yeah.
It's like he's
Finally.
finally back in the mainstream, but it's just like, just be Cage, man. Just be Cage.
Yep.
Exactly.
And it's beautiful. I was just watching the unbearable whatever of massive talent, Pedro
Unbearable
Pascal,
Massive
and obviously
Talent.
Nick Cage.
Yes.
Incredible. So I'm looking forward to his new career as himself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we call it the Age of Cage?
Yes.
The
Yes.
Cage
Cut.
sounds. I don't know.
Oh, cut. Print. Check the gate. Moving on.
There
Got
we
it.
go. Obviously, we're no stranger now to Nicolas Cage here on the show, and so folks can,
Never been a stranger.
as soon as we can do a commentary for Renfield, you can expect a show discussing it not long after, because that's the new thing we do now. Not only do I get subjected to a conversation about Nicolas Cage,
Yeah.
I get recorded while watching it.
Yep.
And I do this all for the love and
It's
support of our patrons. So don't say I didn't do any favors for you.
Just wait.
Right.
Just wait.
I'm very intrigued by it, for sure. I'm intrigued by Cage as Dracula, for sure. So
Yep.
Isn't he
was-
already Dracula though in real life?
right,
Yeah.
It's
Probably.
true.
He bought that haunted mansion in New Orleans and stuff. He has like a pyramid. And,
He has a crow.
Yeah,
Star
so-
Trek can have him, Lauren. Star Trek can have him.
The Wrath of Cage.
The Wrath of Cage.
Hey, Brennan.
So you would think we're on a Let's Get Cagey episode with all of this, but no.
I already told the boys no rails.
Right.
No, yeah, because
That's true.
What happened was you said that we were 3 minutes in and we were fine, and then I had to come in and be like, no, you're not.
Right, exactly. Right. We are off the rails even sooner than expected. We didn't even leave the station. No, but yeah, Andor is a very deep show, and
Mhm.
I'm glad more than ever. Usually it's just a scheduling thing why we sit back and wait to get everything with Star Wars shows. We did it with Kenobi, with Mando. We did it with Bad Batch as well, and more than ever, I think Andor needed the processing time.
Yeah.
It needed the rewatch. It was so jam packed, and every week was kind of a roller coaster, like this podcast. And getting all of it and going through all of it in one didn't necessarily help calm down the roller coaster, but it kind of helped me think about what I was feeling, because this show didn't give a lot of time
No.
to think.
Yeah, no.
Just a lot of gut punches, and so excited to have you and your services with us tonight to basically just gush about this. Hopefully you did like it, because that was kind of a prerequisite. The title is We Love Andor, so
Yes.
be really awkward.
Bait and switch.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, no.
Laser beams coming out of my eyes now.
Exactly.
The Empire was right.
Oh god.
And back to the back room you go.
Exactly. Right.
Into the trunk.
Yeah, right. But no, it was quite a big show to digest, and
Dude,
so need all the help we can get. But I know one thing is that I did enjoy it.
Yes.
It's some of the best Star Wars content to date. I don't know how agreeable that is, or if that's too much of a hot take.
No.
Andor's better than everything.
Well,
Was
we
I
might
running
as well
that account?
come out
I
and
don't know.
say it.
I mean, what I will say is that, you know, Andor's on a level of quality that is different. I'm not gonna say better, but it's just different, because it there's moments in it that feel like Star Wars, and then there's moments in it that feel like something else entirely, right?
sure.
Like there's I recently rewatched it. Like, and when I say recently, I mean over like the last couple of days. I binged it, and there's just there were moments where I was watching it where I had to like remind myself, like, no, this is Star Wars. This is Star Wars, and it was usually like a word. Like someone would say a word that was very Star Wars. Like someone would say Chandrilla, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got it. It's still Star Wars because there's
I've
moments
heard these words before.
Yeah, exactly. But there's so many moments in it where you're so engrossed in the drama and in the dialogue, especially that you almost forget that you're watching a Star Wars.
Yeah,
and that was one of the things that made Andor challenging for me when it was premiering, because with Star Wars you kind of expect a certain type of vibe, you know. Like a lot of the series, which have very different tones and very different feels, they still have that essential element that what do we call it? Camp, maybe?
Yeah.
The essential camp that feels like Star Wars. And Andor has moments where it's like no camp. It is just stark. You know what
brutal.
I mean? Exactly. But it's a good thing. I've said this before. I don't know if I would want it to be like the standard that everything else is measured against. I kind of like that it's an outlier and it's in its own little orbit.
Absolutely.
You know? I heard a lot of takes where it's like, oh, this is what Star Wars should be. This is like, no. Like Star Wars at its heart still needs to have moments where it's just stupid. Like,
yes,
for sure.
We love the stupid.
Yeah,
for sure. And the same way, I saw a lot of people that cited that some of the differences to it were what made it like lesser quality, because it didn't feel enough like Star Wars to be Star Wars. And like it seemed like it fell on some spectrum of extreme opinion, whether it was like to Star Wars, it's the Star Wars that should beat all Star Wars, or it was the worst Star Wars because you forgot it was Star Wars. And it was really something interesting to watch. And from my perspective, like the thumbnail's honest. Like I liked it, and I didn't really get into those thoughts.
No.
I never really felt like it was like the gold standard, or that it was not Star Warsy. I don't know. It's almost one of those things. I don't know if you guys ever experience where you almost have to check in with other people to see what they think, because it's like I'm not thinking, I'm just enjoying the ride. Like
that's precisely why we have the podcast, precisely for that, is to make sure. Wait, is this
right? Am I the weird one?
My mind right?
Right.
Absolutely. So before we talk about what we got and what we loved about what we got, I was curious because this was one that was a little surprising. Not more surprising than Kenobi. I think there was always rumblings about dealing with Rogue One or sort of a prequel to that as soon as when Rogue One came out. But it still was one of those things where it's just like, oh, okay, I guess. At least for me.
No.
And so I didn't have a lot of expectations, but not because I was being like a responsible fan, just because, I didn't ask for it. It was a surprise. So did you have any, when, Andor's announced, did you have any big expectations or assumptions about what we were going to get?
No.
I mean, I'll be the first one to admit I was one of the cynical people when the Andor announcement was made. I mean, it just goes to show how much I know about things. It's just like I know nothing when it comes out, and I loved it. But I mean, and I loved Rogue One. Obviously, I love Diego Luna. So Puerto Rican. I see his Latinx character doing the thing on screen. I'm just like, yes, I will support this. However, after seeing the dude, spoiler alert, dude dies in Rogue One. So I'm just like, well, kind of had a quasi-complete character arc. So I didn't feel like, which goes to show like the pretentiousness of us as Star Wars fans. I mean, I say us in the royal sense, not hurling any insults at anyone here.
Sure.
But the pretentiousness that we have sometimes thinking that we're entitled and of deserving X or Y type of content. And we all fall into that trap. I talk against it, but I fall into that trap myself. And I was just like, well, we don't need Andor because we can be exploring other parts of the Star Wars galaxy and new things. And there's so many new things. Why do we keep defaulting to the existing, Empire Rebellion era between 3 and 4? Let's just, go either backwards or forwards.
Right.
So I was lukewarm about it, but since it's Diego Luna, I'm just like, let's wait and see. And then it's just like, oh, it's the spy thrillers. And it's like, what does spy thriller mean for the Star Wars galaxy? So, obviously, at the end of the day, more Star Wars is good. I'd rather have quote unquote bad Star Wars than no Star Wars. I'm thankful in that sense for any content. So, even though I felt like we didn't need it, I still want it, because it's still Star Wars. Sure. And then the show came out and I got to eat my words, right? Because it just like rocked my world. But yeah, I was cynical coming into it.
That's really interesting because, I revealed like that was me with Kenobi.
Yeah.
I felt it was so unnecessary, especially with the little bit we got in Rebels. Like the little bit we got, I felt was enough to see where he was at in his transition from Kenobi to Ben. And so I was like, I don't need a show to do what Twin Sons already did.
Yeah. And then egg on your face.
Absolutely. Because very similarly, it didn't do anything I expected it to do. It wasn't, him around a campfire. It wasn't him just looking after Luke. And it constantly pulled big choices that surprised me. And I really hadn't thought about it that way with how you described it, where it's just like, yeah, that is kind of pretentious of me to think that I know what should and shouldn't be made as Star Wars and all this other stuff. Like, to make this prejudgment of just like, that's not really a great choice. I probably would have done something else, like a Boba Fett show,
Yeah. And there is kind of an inherent pretentious nature of fandoms. Like there's an entitlement that's a huge problem in the Star Wars fandom as a whole.
Sure.
Because we think that we know Star Wars, but in reality, we don't know anything. We barely know. We've been given breadcrumbs and we will follow those breadcrumbs into a larger story. But in reality, right now, we don't have the full picture. I might. It's fine. Yeah. I've completely thrown off my train of thought.
Happens.
No, but you're right though. Because like you're right on the money. Because as fans, we have our headcanon, right? And that headcanon often is far more powerful than the actual canon because it's wrapped up in our own desires and what we think would be rad or what we think makes sense.
It's personal.
Exactly. And like, so just speaking from my own experience, I have tried to shut that up as completely as I can, because while I have things that I think would be cool and that I think would be interesting, at the end of the day, when something new comes out, like I didn't have any expectations for Andor. When I knew it was coming, I was like, all right, cool. Show me what you got. What are you working with here? So
such a superpower.
I guess, because, I don't want to get all amped up about what I think it's going to be.
Right.
And then when I'm watching it, I'm not experiencing it. I'm not like locked in on it because I'm always like, that's not what I would have done. And I would have done this. Why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they pulling Star Destroyers out of the sky? Man.
And that's why you're not getting checks from Lucasfilm.
Right.
Exactly. And here's another thing. I always assume that the people that are working on these shows are smarter than me and are more capable than me. And with Andor, I was proven right because I wasn't expecting anything from it. I was very surprised as I was watching it because it was a challenge. It was a challenge as a fan. Because, and I'd spoken on this prior, I think, but because it is such a street level, ground level view of what it's like to live under fascism. And there's shades of reality that are a little similar. And it's like my conflict watching it, or the challenge I had was to be like, okay, Star Wars for me has always meant escape. I get to take reality, put my blinders on, and I get to go somewhere fantastic. This was not escapism. This was like the mirror being held up, and I was like,
just as necessary.
Exactly. And I literally had this same experience rewatching it recently, where I was like watching these characters interact in this environment in which they have a boot heel on their neck, and I'm asking myself, would I make that decision? Would I do that? Would I rush that line of stormtroopers? Would I do this? Would I do that? And it was it was a really interesting intellectual exercise. And I was like, this is happening because of a Star War.
Yeah.
Like I'm having an existential crisis because of a Star War.
Yeah. I think it was Star Wars concentrated in a lot of ways. But by going that like myopic with the characters and everything, it really took away some of the allegory. I think that's always been there, you know. It's definitely one of those things that's sometimes hard to look at, though. Like I remember, you know, the first time I watched The Last Jedi, I was conflicted. Not that I was like, oh, I think I just saw a bad movie.
No.
Is like I was the fan that wanted to see heroic Luke. I wanted to see the comeback, the return of the Jedi and everything. And instead I got a story that felt way too dang familiar. Because it felt like me in a lot of ways where I was in life. Like this sort of depressive season of self-doubt and self-loathing and, you know, questioning the construct of things. And it's just like, you know, and then realizing like, oh, I'm in front of the sunset and I can make a choice right now of what kind of person I want to be. Darn you, Star Wars, you mean something again. You know, it's just like the challenge of having that self-talk, like you're talking about, to go through it, not just feel like, and that's what I say, like whether the initial feel is good or bad, you should always process that why. You know, like it's okay to learn something from our media. It's okay to be entertained and educated. Like, and so the challenge is to look at it long enough to see something to learn.
Do you have any idea how many conversations I had about the prison industrial complex because I had a friend who was watching Andor at the time, being oh, thank God we don't live in that.
It's like,
baby girl.
Do we though?
Forced labor. Like, oh yeah. I'm gonna make myself angry if I talk more about it.
That's gonna be the interesting thing tonight, is because like if you're anything like me coming into this, a lot of the things I loved that this show did are those like high tension things that get a reaction out of you.
Oh yeah. I mean, the whole show is tension. The music behind every scene is tension, you know, everything. And because that's what it is. That's what it is to live in that kind of environment where you don't know if you're going to get stopped by some random stormtrooper and sentenced to 6 years because you were just there. You know what I mean? It's that what they're trying to, at least to my read, what they're trying to do is show how it boils over, how it's a slow boil, it's a slow burn, you know. You got Luthen manipulating the Empire to overreact and stuff, which is chef's kiss. But it is that slow burn, and you know that involves tension. So you can't. It makes sense because this show really can't have that many lighthearted moments, because then it takes away from that feeling of tension.
Sure.
You know. It manages it in some spots. You know, it manages it in some spots, but it's rare. They're little bitty spots.
Well, it's almost like it's extending the wick that leads to the dynamite of Rogue One and A New Hope.
That's better. You just described it better than I ever could. That's it.
Well, no, like I'm thinking of that as you're saying it, because it's just one of those things. They're trying to keep the feeling that justifies the choice in Rogue One. You know, what would cause? Because, like, you know, in that Jyn, like in Rogue One, so many memorable lines, but one I love is her interaction with Saw, where it's just like, you know, you could stand to see the Imperial flag reign, and it's just like, it's not a problem if you don't look up.
Exactly.
But it's trying to get to the understanding, like it's not about looking up. It's there. Like there's no avoiding what the machine has become at this point. And it takes away the question of, like, you know, like she says to Mon Mothma and the other leaders, what choice do we have?
Right.
We have to do something.
Right. And it's interesting.
This is building to all the way through. And I think season 2 will do the exact same thing, where it's just because what's exciting is the next season's literally going into Rogue One. And so it's all going to be one really long build to one of the greatest first kicks to the Empire in this story we love.
And I love that you brought up Jyn, because Cassian is in the same space at the beginning of Andor that Jyn was in Rogue One.
Absolutely.
Right? Kind of a little, because he was when he was younger, he was all about going after the Empire and, you know, being a rabble rouser, and he got sentenced to little jaunt in prison for it. And then when he gets out, what is he trying to do? Just survive. He's just trying to survive under the Imperial rule. He's not trying to make a big splash. He basically, it wasn't worth it. You know, he was that line that we ended up. He was on Mimban, and all the rebels did was fight themselves. You know, jaded and jaded, and then just trying to survive. And over the course of the show, you see what turns him into a rebel. Those little injustices that just keep mounting up, and for lack of a better term, just keep pissing him off. Because that's what.
Absolutely.
Because it leads into his reason, his personal, like one of the things. So, you know, now that we're like really fully in on it, one of the things I really loved was that every character was led to make a personal choice for their stance.
Yeah.
Yep.
One way or the other. You've got characters on the side of the Empire making their personal choice for why they can stand to be a part of the Empire, and you've got on the side of just soon to be rebels, you know, their personal choice of why they're involved in kicking back at the Empire. I like that it took that journey because, you know, with a show being called Andor, you can kind of be wrapped up in the assumption it's just going to be about him and his journey. And really, he was just another piece in the greater puzzle. And so, like, I liked that it led everyone to their reasoning.
Yeah.
And
which is one of the really interesting things of the show. It's precisely that, like, Cassian isn't like the traditional protagonist that like moves the plot forward. Actually, he does nothing to move the plot forward in the whole
season. Happens around him.
Things happen to him, and the genius of the show is to see that like that's actually like how life really happens to all of us. Like, we're just victims of the circumstance, and it's like how we react to all these circumstances that like led us into the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. So maybe that's why some people didn't connect with the show, because it's the mirror. Some people don't like to look into that mirror, but like it really, all of Star Wars has always, since George Lucas did A New Hope, it's always been saying something about the world that we live in. But you know, it's a space opera, so it's always been subtext, right? It's there if you want to read it. It's not there if you want to ignore it. But I think Andor and a lot of the things that Lucasfilm has been doing recently, but specifically Andor, have been shifting the tide to be like, okay, it's not subtext, it's text, it's right there, and it's a slow burn, yes, but it's a slow burn that ends with a sledgehammer to your face, and like if that doesn't you know do it for you to like understand what Star Wars has always been trying to do, I don't know how else we can engage with the media, right?
Well, it goes back to something you said that I thought was interesting earlier about like you'd rather have bad Star Wars than no Star Wars, and like the realization I made, and luckily hasn't like come true to me, but like I concluded a while ago that at some point it's not that they're going to make a bad Star Wars movie, it's just that they're going to make a Star Wars movie not for me.
Exactly.
And that's really what we mean when we say like, this isn't as good as these things, or this isn't as good as what I thought it was going to be. We're really saying it wasn't for me. And
or maybe it's not for you now, and it'll be for you in 20 years. It's like Return of the Jedi was my jam when I was growing up, but now it's a different one, and it kind of shifts and changes as I shift and change, which is why I think some people in the community, are kind of pathetic, because they are the same person that they were when they saw Star Wars for the first time and aren't able to mature and adapt and be a different person that has different thoughts. It's like, no, I want my badass Luke Skywalker that actually never existed, because that's my mind 30 years ago. And to like not be able to like understand that, one, it was never for you. You're just along for the ride. But two, like things inherently need to change because times change and people change. And it's a different generation that's going to consume the media. So it necessarily has to evolve. And so do we as people. I mean, I think it's kind of weird, because George Lucas always talks about selfishness and selflessness, right? And that's the dark side and light side. And to not change, and one Star Wars to not change, it's the dark side, right? It's the selfishness that George Lucas talks about. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy here, but
no, because I even have a small.
I'm locked in the trunk of the car. So well, the methane gas is getting to me right now.
No, he doesn't know what he's saying.
You're not wrong though, because even the one thing that I've learned with myself personally is, like, say for example, The Bad Batch, when season 1 hit, I watched it and I was like, it's okay, it's cool, it's all right. But I inherently realize, okay, maybe it's not hitting right now. Maybe I'm just not in the space right now to vibe with this. Like I just rewatched it recently, the whole season 1, and I was like, I'm ready now. I was now in the place because it was also different to watch it consecutively, just back to back. And I realized, okay, now I'm ready to consume this. Now I'm ready to filter this through my experience and see how it makes me feel. And Andor wasn't entirely different either. The first time I watched it, it was kind of a struggle to figure out, like, what am I identifying with? What am I connecting with here? Watching it again this time, it was instant connection. I was like, oh, and it was like we talked about, it's the mirror. For me, that was the connection to it. I have to look into the mirror and I've got to ask myself those serious questions, because I don't know if anyone's paying attention, but reality kind of bites right now, and it's and it's moving in a very specific and scary direction, and all of us as individuals are going to have to make those personal choices as to how we're going to react to it and what we are going to do with it. And to have a Star Wars that you can look to come to that conclusion, like, oh, this is why it's important, this is why it's connecting with me, is because we're all going to have to make these decisions before long. And it's also, there's also an element of that that's slightly terrifying.
Right.
For sure.
But I think that's the brilliant thing about Andor too. It's just that it's about that decision making, and with some films and with the original trilogy, like, it seems like the decision, you make it once. I'm gonna be a hero once, and that's all you need to do to be forever the hero. But Andor shows you, like, no, you have to make the decision every day, because you're gonna run into things every single day, and like, you might not want to make that, the right decision today or tomorrow yet, or the day after that, and that piles up. And even though you think that by not making that decision it doesn't affect you, eventually it will, because all these things will eventually, the boot will press down on you if you think that it won't. And I think Andor just shows that brilliantly. I mean, Andor, he's just dodging everything as much as he can, thinking that, well, I'm not going to fight against the Empire because it's not a problem for me. Right. Exactly. It will eventually. And I think that was the great thing about Andor. It's like, how does oppression affect us and affect our decision-making process every single day?
Yeah. Well, I think it brought that, like, conversation and that realization to a normal person's perspective. Because of Andor being relatively a normal guy. I mean, it's Diego Luna, but aside from that,
extremely handsome,
extremely talented,
a great dancer.
Watch Havana Nights.
Great dancer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to watch Havana Nights, but watch it.
No, watch it.
You don't watch it for the plot. Let's put it.
No, you watch it for Diego Luna.
Exactly. He is the plot. No.
He is.
Like, as we're talking about it, it's just the realization that, like, we're not breaking new ground. Like, is the allegory taking on a new face? Absolutely. I think it is, and it should, because what we will look around and see nowadays is different than what George Lucas looked around and saw in the 70s.
Very different.
Right.
And so, but nonetheless,
or even in the Attack of the Clones, because in Attack of the Clones, he was telling us about the dangers of elected representatives and how they slowly come in and become Papa Palps. And
exactly
what's happening right now, you're seeing what George was telling us in Attack of the Clones.
And that's one of the things on a side note, if I can, I will remember what I was going to say. But to that point, that's one of the things I defend about the sequel trilogy vehemently, is it's just like, it absolutely, and I do agree, yes, well, there will be a lot of people that come around to it, but it's absolutely the Star Wars of its time, because it's dealing with sort of the results of a generation that came out of those things, out of the highly politicized era, the idea of, like, politicizing war and all of this other stuff, and this idea of welcoming in power for the sake of order and all of this other stuff. Like, the sequel trilogy is very allegorical, I think, of our day and age now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but that's a episode study for another one. But
Star Wars ages with its audience.
It should. And it takes on, again, like, the characteristics of who it needs to speak to. We see that selfishness corrupts. We see that in Palpatine. We see that in Vader. We see that in the Empire. They're treating each other just as bad as they're treating everybody that's not the Empire. Like, but there's this way you can look at it where it's just like, okay, but I'm not Luke Skywalker though. So it's like, I'm not affected by that. Or, you know, I don't identify with the big hero. And it's like, all right, well, let's go to the street corner and find a guy that you can relate to. And that feels like Andor, where it's just like, he's the Luke of this story, where he's purveying like, hey, this is the warning of the choices you can and should make.
It asks the question in every episode and throughout Star Wars as a whole, what are you willing to put up with? What are you willing to allow?
This.
Exactly. What are you willing to allow your peers to go through? Like there are times where you will be faced with a decision to act or not, and that could have ripple effects.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
good point,
that's the thing with Star Wars is it's always emphasized that the right decision is always the hardest decision.
Exactly.
And it's always the one that does have consequences. Like you will face consequences for making the right decision.
And sometimes very irrational. Like I don't endorse every stupid idea, but because like it's not that every good idea is stupid, but sometimes it causes you to be stupid to do the right thing sometimes.
I think Brasso thought for about 0.5 seconds before he bricked that.
But he did the right thing.
And that whole
and then he was like, should I yell after this? And it's like,
that picture is one of my favorites. I sent that to a friend of mine recently, and they know nothing about Star Wars or anything or where that came from, but you know, they're recently like trying to revisit Star Wars and everything, and I was like, yeah, we were at the Star Wars convention, and we got to see the Episode 9 trailer and everything. It was really cool. And he's like, oh, that must have been awesome. And I sent him that picture of Brasso like yelling in the streets. I was like, this was me, if you can imagine it. But yeah, I'm absolutely thinking of that big climax where it doesn't make sense. Like, you know, that the concept of we'll fight the Empire, but can we win? Should we? We're outnumbered, outgunned. Like all it's like it was very irrational, but it was the sense of standing up for what was right, and that was Marva's whole push. Was it's just like at some point either you stand against it or you just get sucked in.
Yeah, and that's one of my all-time favorite things about Andor, and I'm struggling right now to like think if there's any equivalent throughout the rest of Star Wars, but it's the monologues in this show.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are just some god tier.
Which I have, and I don't know. I'm if it was you, Goose, or if you had somebody make those for you, but I loved that after every monologue, I could count on Triad putting one up on Instagram because I just needed to read that and cry.
So I did it for purely selfish reasons, and I think I will get some likes out of them. But
oh my gosh,
it was effective.
I love them.
I
just wish I had the talent of those writers. I mean, I'm just like, how the hell do you write that and not like smirk at yourself? I mean, I just
high five me.
I made my mind a sunless place. How do you not just like high five yourself immediately?
I'm telling you.
And that's one of the interesting things about this show is it tells you everything, like through those great monologues, through those extended sequences of great acting that like some of the greatest out there. Like it's not that it tells you what to think, but it lays it out for you to make the choice for yourself of what to think about this situation from this perspective. You know, we mentioned Luthans. There's of course little boy
Nemec.
Sweet
Nemec's manifesto and everything.
Or like I call him Mouse from the Matrix. It's a character.
Same guy.
He's
same guy. Or the mechanic from Fast and the Furious.
You're blowing my mind right now. Really?
No, not the same guy.
No, not in terms of the actor. Just in terms of the
Okay. I was about to say. It's just like
any idealist who just pays the price for being.
Because if anybody knows anything about me, it's Star Wars and Fast and the Furious. But no, I love this.
All about family.
I mean, there's some similarities there. All I'm saying. The only difference is that Fast and Furious got to John Cena first. Okay, so Star Wars, get on it.
Honey.
Come on,
Let's go.
I love it.
And you get the difference between spite and hope, and how that inspires action. Like you get Luthen, who is 100% all steam ahead. Spite. He is fighting the Empire, as revenge for something that happened to him. And then you get Marva, you get Nemec, who are all about hope for a better future. And that's what wins out in the end. Like, it's further Star Wars lesson learning of spite gets you a hole in the ground. It doesn't get you anywhere. But when you introduce the sun into your mind again, when you see what could be, and you get to share that sunrise with someone else, that's what it's about. Rebellions are built on hope. Hope is built on action. Like, you have to do something about it.
Hope is an active thing. Yeah,
exactly.
It doesn't happen just by not doing anything. I want to address what like that. What saying here, because it wasn't to alert the police, but and it's not just Puerto Rico. It's just that I'm Puerto Rican, so like I always think about my culture first. But the whole chime thing was wonderful because, and it was funny because I'm very bad at putting things together. But I was talking to Mark from Broaxium, Mark Perez, and like he mentioned that the whole chime thing, how that's like a battle cry, so to speak, right? When like Latin American countries are going on strike against the government or something like that, that's something that we culturally do. You use pots and pans, call them cacerolazos in Puerto Rico, and you just make noise with banging on metal objects. And like when I put that together, I was like, oh my god, and all the whole and the thing, and then doing that, and just like that cultural awareness that the show has had to like bring in again the real tropes of things that happen in real life, and then Star Warsifying them. It's just brilliant because again, like people talk about how the show is not Star Wars enough, but for me, it's like because Star Wars has always been about transforming the mundane into the galactic, right? To give it an adjective and make it blue, exactly. And for me, that what Dan mentioned, the kind was a great example of that. It's just like it's something that we absolutely do. That absolutely happens. It's a cultural thing. And it's a cultural thing in the right context that the show put it in, because it is a act of subversion and striking right against systems of power. But then with the with the Star Wars twists, which I thought it was beautiful, and then it culturally connected with me. So like the show kind of went above and beyond in that sense for me to be like, okay, well, you had me at hello, but but now you have me hooked here. But I just wanted to address that real quick.
It's something, and thanks for bringing that up, Dan. Like, it's something I really do appreciate that Star Wars has been working to do more. Not to bring like Star Wars to normal, but to take like to just acknowledge like, we could just gloss over and say, well, they're not real people or characters. That's all in space and everything like that. But for the need of representation in today's climate with media and everything, you know, with the Book of Boba Fett bringing in Maori culture, with this bringing in some of the Puerto Rican culture and whatnot, like, that's great. Like, bringing in and introducing those things that people can identify with, that can make Star Wars kind of more relevant for them. Like, I only see it as a good thing to give us more doors into the galaxy far, far away.
It's never a bad thing.
It's only a bad thing if you're a racist, right?
Exactly. Why were you upset that the mermaid was black?
Yeah, who cares what they think anyway?
Right.
Exactly.
It nothing to lose sleep over, for sure.
No.
I did lose sleep over this show, though, especially So I didn't expect anything except that Andor was going to be in it, and so
boy was he.
Getting
yes, he was.
He was in it.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, if that's the tagline. He's in it.
Shirtless, no less.
Yes, he
is. That's true. Yeah. We get he had some great moments to just
he probably put that in his contract. He was just like, this
make me look good.
Tarps off.
Right. Yeah. When your character's got a limited amount of screen time, like you already have the end, you're working backwards. It's just like, all right, I need as many opportunities to look sexy as I can.
And no waxed chest too.
Right.
Appreciated that.
But with the heist, it's like, okay, so he's kind of getting into this semblance of the rebellion and everything like that, but he was never fully in that.
No.
And more than that, I didn't expect the follow-up then of the extended prison sequence. How much time we spent with him really under the Imperial rule, probably in the worst place to experience Imperial control. those were the episodes I think I related most to people that were talking about like, oh, this is like tough to get through. This is hard to watch kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if those were the big ones for any of you guys, but that was also the time I felt the most like what we talked about earlier, where everything was kind of just happening to him. It wasn't necessarily him leading the charge. Kind of there in the end, but it just seemed like we were just living in that environment for a little bit with him.
Oh yeah. And you needed that time. You needed that time in there because you had to, like with Aldhani, you see how the Empire doesn't care about anything. Like, and they look at natives and people that are native to that world as detestable and smelly and all. And then you had to see the prison scene because you had to see how they really don't value any life. You're a number, and they will work you until you are no longer useful. And then they're not only are they gonna discard you, they're gonna wheel you out in front of everyone to watch. They're gonna give you the most unceremonious, unrespectful like end possible. And all of that builds up to like, I don't know, the way I filter it is like rage. Like, you know, having to be constantly subjected to this, it's just like, oh no, the bastards are going to lose now, you know. And that was the one way out. That was the riot. It's just like, no matter what, we're out of here. And I mean, I shouldn't revel in this, but my favorite scene from that escape sequence in One Way Out, aside from, you know, Andy Serkis's amazing monologue, was seeing the Imperial guards huddled in terror in a room.
No,
you know?
revel in that.
Yeah,
because it's almost the same.
They should be.
Exactly. It's the same from the finale when Deidre Miro is being like mobbed by this crowd of people, and she's panicking and terrified. And my first thought was, good.
Yeah,
right.
You should be.
I was honestly surprised, just on that note, that she got pulled out of that. Not surprised by who did it, but I thought, oh my gosh, are we getting a stomping scene right now? Like I was
I think as soon as she got pulled
there
out,
would have been a content warning advisory. That was
right. Like, well, you know, and at that point they pulled so many punches with me. I was almost just like, you know,
yeah, dude. I mean, the series starts with Cassian going to a house of ill repute. Like that's literally how the series starts. Like that was my first signal to be like, this ain't gonna be normal. This ain't gonna be a normal Star Wars. Like,
it starts from the bottom.
nice.
Shout out to no.
Were you about to say shout out to Bottoms? I'm saying that now.
If you won't, I will.
You provide.
I salute you.
So does anybody else love that the prison escape is an allegory for Rogue One in that sense? The one way out, like the do it no matter what the outcome.
Yeah,
or is it just me?
Well, it's this whole the climb motif. I remember like the first time that like in Andor when someone said, I don't remember who it was, but there was like it said climb. I think it was like during the Aldhani heist when Nemec says climb. I think that's the first time people were just like, oh, that's the connection with Rogue One because K2SO was saying that. And it's like climb is a pretty common word. It doesn't necessarily, but then they kept the motif of repeating that, and it's like, okay, well, maybe it does make sense. It is Tony Gilroy after all, so.
And it can be
probably intentional.
And I think it can definitely be as thick as you want it to be. Like you can take it as that meaningful if you want it to be, but you can also just take it as coincidence. But I think it was in my case, I liked the very literal connectives that it's like, oh, this is why he makes this decision later. This is why he makes it. Like, I enjoyed that. I can understand that being a little heavy-handed for a lot of people. So it can just be coincidence. But like, I loved, and it was really when I realized like, oh, it's the Imperial cog. It really just seemed like this really heavy-handed but appreciated connection of just like, oh, this is why he's just willing to throw himself at the cause. Like, you know, he'd rather fail, like fighting back, standing up, than to continue to live under the boot, like you're talking about, Kev, with the life there. He's seen how bad it can get.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to put up with that.
It's on your feet or on your knees.
Yep.
That's what it is. You know, it's like you either come back with your shield or carried on it, you know.
I mean, and the most heartbreaking part of that scene, to everyone's point about that, is it's Andy Serkis's character. Sorry, and blanked out on the name, but then it's just like the whole "I can't swim" thing. I'm just like, holy crap! And it's just and for me, it's not just like the tragic part of just him not being. Well, we don't know, but you know, I think all signs point to there were no floating devices.
Live, darn you!
No, you know that. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, it's just like, and him being committed to that cause and mobilizing everyone to finally escape and, you know, take up arms, even though he knows that there's no way out for himself. Just like, well, I know I'm not making it out, but I still have to do this because it's the right thing to do.
He burned his life for a sunset he'll never see.
Exactly.
No, I'm going into the show. I'm putting him on my back. I'm jumping off with him, and I'm going to swim him to shore.
Oh no, I couldn't. It was one of those things, especially as the show went on, more and more I needed to cling to the hope that Kino Loy is still out there somewhere.
This is what I need. I need a Last Action Hero scenario. I need a magic movie ticket. I need to go into the show with my magic movie ticket. I got to put some floaties on his arms, and I got to shove him off and be like, "You'll be fine," and then I got to get out of there.
What movie would we put him in, though? Because that's the thing you could do too.
Lord of the Rings.
I knew it had to be.
We share one brain cell.
No, I absolutely. If that felt like a classic, like Twilight Zone twist for me.
Oh,
yeah.
That was the gut punch of that, of just like, yeah. No.
And again, I can only imagine the writer just doing,
knife
like,
and twist.
Screw that guy.
Yeah, there's got to be some sick satisfaction of the writer. Like, this is going to make so many people cry.
Yes. I can just imagine him not writing and then going back into the script. It's like, no, I just need one last thing.
Well, it is the one thing, like, joking aside, I appreciate they didn't give a definitive. I prefer to live in the world where it's ambiguous, because it's just like that's amazingly a saving grace in this show, where everything else is given to us. And even when we win, it's sort of by taking something on the chin, because even from this point, once he gets out, the loss of Marva, and even in rescuing, Ferrex, I guess, like, that's only going to bring the boot down harder there.
Yep.
Now everyone has a chance to push back and flee while they can, but lives are upheaved in order to stand against the Empire. So it's just like, I'll take any good any ambiguous good I can get out of this. So
silence while reading.
So, we've got to get like the psychic link together to where it's just like when I read, you talk, because I can't do both at the same time.
No, absolutely not. I'm also reading because he's watching Last of Us.
And I will never trust a Trandoshan, and I will always revel in the scene from Book of Boba Fett where Chrysanthemum rips an arm off.
There's got to be
that was for you, Dan. That was absolutely.
I mean, come on. Here in the High Republic, he's a dope ass Trandoshan.
Yeah, I guess Skier's okay.
Every Trandoshan is dope. Like, questionable life choices aside.
Yes.
Like,
true.
Like a giant lizard man. Come on.
They're basically Piccolo. Let's be real.
I just
no. I mean, yes, but no.
Right? Are you a Yoshi?
No, my problem is they hunt Wookiees for funsies, and that's not good. You crossed the line.
We could be diving into some of that. I mean, obviously that's a show we're not talking about here, but Bad Batch, seeing Gungi, seeing Tarful and the Wookiees, I think we're going to see a little bit more of the standing up to the oppressive master race going on.
So, good. Yes. Nothing better happened to my baby boy Gungi. Nothing better happened.
We will march upon
We'll
Lucasfilm.
cancel Star Wars.
Yeah, right. Not if they know what's good for them.
No, it will be like
you kill King Oloy, but you stay away from
exactly. Unless they want a Helm's Deep scenario of a bunch of angry, pale nerds marching on Lucasfilm Studios, you leave Gunji alone.
Yeah. That's how I felt with B2 Emo. Like when
baby boy,
when that officer took him down, I was like,
do that.
No, he's geriatric. You can't do that. He's got to be gently handled, you fool.
It's true.
But
then he got a brick to the face, so karma.
Right. Oh, rightfully so. Like my heart skipped as if B2 was any other character. Because I'm just like, is he okay?
Just any other character. He's important.
No, I don't understand how Star Wars does this consistently, where they will break your heart with a robot.
Right.
Every time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, and especially nowadays. I mean, we've gotten with BB-8, we've gotten with BD1. I had to look at him at my shelf over there. B2 K2SO Dio.
Don't forget Dio.
Yes,
my anxious little baby boy.
I don't know what magic they use, but it all seems to go to the droids.
The human psyche. That's what
the only thing that I have against Lucasfilm right now with treatment of droids was what they did to poor L3 in Solo. I thought that was kind of a dick move.
She lives forever in the stars.
She's all about. I keep saying this like all the time in our podcast. It's like she's all about droid independence and droid rights and all these things, and then Lucasfilm actively was doing all that bit right for her to be advocating for this thing, and then they're like, wait, what would be the most fitting end for her? Let's enslave her inside the Millennium Falcon. Right. So she's now serving someone for the rest of her life for eternity. I was just like, that's no cool. That was like the anti B2 emo.
I'll bite. But I'll bite. You're making a valid point.
They imprisoned her against her will. She had a do not resuscitate, and they were like, no, we need your brain. So now you're a slave.
I love that movie, and I will defend it tooth and nail. But that's always been one of the things that stood out to me. That's been hard to digest. Just because like it was so led up to with her independence and everything like that, and she finally gets it. And I do think that was in that early era of they didn't know how else to get fans to feel sometimes other than to take away a fan favorite as soon as they give it to you.
Exactly. And Lando couldn't die, obviously.
No.
Right.
Could he? Maybe he had a twin.
Or like Beer Fest with Landfill and his twin brother. I'd really like you guys to call me Landfill.
Right. Turns out it was Glando all along.
It was actually Chris Ryan's in heavy makeup.
I was talking about this with a friend of mine recently. I say recently, it's probably a few months ago. But
time isn't real.
Right. It's hard to measure, honestly. But like I would have so much preferred that, in the moment of like kind of like what Chewie did. Like I loved that Chewie's choice wasn't just to go because Han called him, but because he saw Han for the person that he was and was like, no, I can't leave him because he didn't leave me kind of situation.
He's going to die if I don't go with him.
That too.
He needs a babysitter.
And then he died anyway, but I would have much preferred all right, L3, let's go. And it's just like, just rip out the thing. And it's like, no, you go. And it's just like, or something where it's just like, because obviously they queued up the plot point of like, she's the brain, like she's
the navigational,
right. But like I feel like she could have lived without that part of her.
Right. Take it away where like her sentience isn't part of it. So that
exactly.
You can still use her, but she's not a slave.
Yeah, you couldn't have built her a new body.
Right.
Really?
I mean,
upload her and then download her, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
We can do that here. We can do it in Star Wars.
It's just
exactly.
She's in the cloud.
If Walt Disney can do it, then darn it, L3 can too.
At this point, it's just Han being lazy. He's got like a sticky note in his cabin, like transfer L3, and he just keeps ignoring it.
Well, it's one of those. It's just made more and more difficult to swallow. Like I love how we're becoming a solo cast now, but it's just so much harder when, like, okay, and then even after that, not only was Lando willing to bet the Falcon no matter how confident he was of his skills, but he was willing to bet his ship on a card game. Now he's willing to bet his ship again with knowing that his partner's brain is in there.
Yeah.
Really? Like, it just compounds, and it's just like,
it'd be like Mr. Freeze.
Sorry.
so I just rewind back to the Darth
wife.
Maul scene and watch that over and over instead.
As you do.
So, well, you know, I mean, as expected, we've gone all over the map with this, but to kind of hit some key points here as we wrap up, because wrapping up usually takes half an hour.
Sure. As is the podcast.
Right. Well, and luckily we're safe, because apparently no Broaxium tonight in favor of Dan watching Last of Us.
And
so
Claire,
there you go.
I look forward to a text from her absolutely sobbing her eyes out.
Listen, I wouldn't play the game, but I'm going to watch it for Pedro.
Yep. So, Nick Offerman's in it too. Nick Offerman's in it, and I will watch anything he's in.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Now I just need to know who he is. So
I didn't play the video game, but I know he's a character.
Exactly.
I saw something on Screen Crush today, so I moderately know some things.
You're right. It was a game. But wanted to kind of hit on any particulars, maybe things we hadn't talked about, anything you came preloaded with. This is the thing or things I loved most about Andor. Boop. I feel like you haven't talked as much, so
I've been mostly listening because this is a good podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we invite smart people on here for a reason.
For sure. Well, you're one of them, and I wanted to make sure to get your thoughts, because I know you had a lot you loved about this. So
the thing that is running circles in my brain that we haven't talked about, I mean, we mentioned him, obviously, but
Andor.
Well,
Andor,
because he love him dearly. I love all of Diego Luna's micro expressions, how good of an actor he is. Stunning performance all the way through. But I love that the emotional center in a lot of the episodes is his friendship with Brasso. And Brasso in general. Like, we don't usually get a character being so compassionate and, you know, loving and, you know, passing along messages from your mom. We don't get that with male characters a lot of times. We have Brasso, who is this big, tough, you know, Cockney dude, but he is the sweetest sweetheart of all time. And he is there for Cassian in ways that we don't get a lot in Star Wars. You know, usually
and he has a beautiful singing voice. If you haven't seen that video on the Instagram,
I showed it to
you. Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the one, but yeah, no, Boop showed me I TikTok, Instagram, whatever.
Joplin's
oh my gosh.
He's got pipes.
I've never been more game for a Star Wars musical than when I saw that. Put that with Diego Luna's dancing skills, and we've got a show.
And singing skills.
That's true.
Don't forget about Book of Life.
There you go. Oh yes. Yes, the pre-Coco. Yes. Listen, a lot of people slept on that. Okay.
It is good.
It is so good in so many different ways. Okay. I will. Yeah, I remember a friend of ours put that on secretly, and it was one of those like background things.
Attention.
And then it's just like cut 5 minutes later to us like huddled in front of the screen.
He's apologizing to the bull.
Book of Life, highly recommended.
Excellent.
I can't believe
good covers in that soundtrack. Anyway, yeah, we don't usually get a male character as the emotional center of a story. Like, we get scenes of Leia being compassionate for Luke, you know, kind of calming him down on the ship when they leave. But like, I think that was a really good choice to make. Have someone from his past be that good of a friend, and also just make us cry with the line, "I love him more than anything he could ever do wrong."
Yeah.
It is so good.
It doesn't get more Star Wars than that, man.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, like, I loved the family vibe. It wasn't just Andor. It wasn't just even Andor and Marva. It really felt like this beyond blood family, which even they aren't blood, but you know, it extended past their family name with Bix, with Brasso, with the whole community. It felt like at every point they weren't just nobodies in that like they weren't
Exactly.
able to do what they were doing because they were nobodies. It was because they were a part of that community.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great.
And they took care of each other. They fought together, and that is so important.
Absolutely.
100%.
Kev, any big standouts for you that we maybe haven't talked about or talked about enough for you?
So, no, overall, man, it was the thing that I love most about Andor is that it did the thing that I want my media to do, challenge me, like make me think, make me question stuff. Like that's what it did, and that's what I'm very grateful that it did, because as much as I like mindless, just shut it all off and watch things go boom, as much as I like that, I also want to learn something from this. I want to discover something about myself from this. I want to see myself in it, or filter something through my lens. Like, it's got to be a personal experience for me. And Andor did that, but in a very uncomfortable way. Admittedly, it was not the most comfortable experience, and I'm actually very grateful for that. Beyond that, the little thing that I like is Cassian's blaster, because it looks like Kyle Katarn's blaster from Dark Forces. That's the little thing. It's like a little thing. Every time I saw it, I was like, yeah, nice.
Right.
Nerd.
That nostalgia kick.
Yeah. Right. That's it. I mean, everything else, I don't know. There's nothing that I could say stands out that like isn't obvious. Like, all of the obvious standout stuff is all the stuff that I was like, yes, but little things like the blaster. That was great.
For sure. There was I don't want to say the most, but this definitely takes a top 3 on Easter egg Star Wars shows.
Oh yeah.
I felt like,
Big time. Lupin Shop was a cornucopia.
Yeah, they definitely had that card to pull, but it felt like at every given point we were getting little things, little glimpses or name drops, and it's just like, oh wow, this is smack dab in the middle of Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
I mean, to that point, I think that's kind of one of the things that did it for me with the show. Like, my background's in architecture, so like I'm very visual about production design. It's something that I'm that type of nerd, that I'm looking at the background instead of the foreground. So one thing that I really liked about Rogue One was the aesthetics of that movie. Like, it felt really tangible in a way that the sequel trilogy. I love the sequel trilogy, but like the sequel trilogy felt. Not to say that the visual effects or production design weren't good, but it felt a little more fantasy-esque and a little detached from the groundedness that Rogue One gave us. Because I saw that the first trailer for Rogue One, and I saw that first Star Destroyer, and it looked one of the models from the original trilogy. I was just like, it just feels real. It feels like a thing you can just reach out and touch. And Andor kind of like took that and like cranked it up to like not even 11, and like to 17 or 19 or 20. And so like the whole production design of that world was so fleshed out and so beautiful, and like it was a story in of itself. Ferrex was telling like a story about like a working class background in Coruscant with brutalist architecture, and talking about like the boot of the Empire and the depressive factor of it. Like, for me, all of that background storytelling was very powerful and something that I really connected with. So it's something that I felt was not to say that Mando or Obi-Wan doesn't have that, but I think that in Andor it was a little different in like terms of like how they approached it to make sure that narratively really complemented the story, and and again connected to it in a real way to like our world, but still keeping it Star Wars. So that's something that that I really appreciate, and it's something that every time you go back and just watch it, like there's so like when you guys were talking about Luthen's shop, there's so much there that you can just keep going and keep studying, because like it's like you said, it's a cornucopia.
Exactly.
It's a good word.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's something about, and I'm right there with you. Maybe for different reasons in different ways, because I can't draw a straight line to save my life, so. That's not my
rulers are for.
That's true. There you go. But there's something about Rogue One that this definitely mirrored in being so careful with the context for the characters, the visual landscapes that it gives us, because it just seems like they're so much more attentive because they're so close to A New Hope. That's what I've always assumed with Rogue One, why it looks so Star Warsy. Instead of like approaching something in The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi where you're like, all right, jungle planet, make it. You know, it was like, hey, jungle planet, but make it Star Wars.
Exactly.
Right.
There was just some extra layer of creative attention there that I've always loved. Like, there's movies that I put on for what I want to feel. And then there's movies I put on for what I want to see. And Rogue One's one of those where like I want to see all of this beautiful cinematography. Like we talk about Last Jedi all the time, very beautifully looking Star Wars. Rogue One's right there too.
Exactly.
It's just different.
It looks dirty.
Yeah.
And I love that.
It's perfect. It doesn't feel like a modern recreation of Star Wars stuff. Like they magically are able to really make it feel like when you see the Tantive, the interior, you're just like, oh, we're in episode 4 now.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy how they're able to transport you with that stuff. So,
and just looking at stills of Ferrex, like every hallway looks like it goes somewhere.
Yep.
And I'm into that.
I was really grateful for the return of large sets and locations.
And
right.
I think that absolutely helped a lot of what you were talking about, Goose. But also, I feel like Andor pulled their card much like early on. You know, I mean, it's one of the first shots in the original trailer, and it's one of the centerpiece shots in the movie where they, you know, reveal Tarkin against this bone white emerging Star Destroyer. Blew a lot of people's minds that those things are actually white. But Andor did their own version of that with introducing the thing I want to mention, because much like you with the Kal-Katarn blaster, I was like, oh my God, Fantasy Flight Games is on my screen right now because that's an arrestor class.
Yep.
I was just like, when that unique cruiser came across the screen, I lost my mind. That was the most Star Warsy thing they could do for like me, because I love ships. I love Star Wars ships, and seeing that, and of course sharing the scene with Luthans, like just like
tricked out to hell.
Move over, Millennium Falcon. Like,
I love the countermeasures, because like when he says the computer says countermeasures, I'm thinking like my dumb head's like flares,
right?
Throw flares out, and then it's
kinda.
And I was like, whoa, got
that sound engineering for that scene too.
So
like,
good.
And again, I love it when fascists panic. So the Imperial guy on the bridge being like, "Oh no!" Like,
because that whole cruiser is just one like you know, member measuring contest of technology. Yeah, and to have it just usurped by space debris.
It's the Star Wars car from Death Proof.
Oh yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
I thought so.
It was one of those things. I didn't expect to come out of this show with a new favorite ship of all things, but it was pretty epic. It like
I came out of the least favorite ship.
Yeah, Dedra and Cyril.
Don't get me wrong. I love a pathetic man.
Yeah, me.
But he's. You're not incel pathetic.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Men that just make you
like, I'm sure the guy who plays him is delightful. I'm sure.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But I'm also like, dude,
he's an adorable little ginger man. It's amazing.
I'm sure, but man, you played a creepy incel to perfection, and that's a little disquieting.
Yeah,
that's what's on the side of the fascists.
To get in that headspace had to be uncomfortable. And he was one of the ones, I was thinking of earlier when talking about like the many boots and shoes and experiences this show puts us in. It was really interesting to have someone who absolutely represents the kind of person that voted for Palpatine. And no matter how that vote was going to go, it was rigged. But nonetheless, there were people that like absolutely believed in, peace and order. And what's so interesting is seeing, this latest episode of Bad Batch. I got some Andor vibes from that.
Yep,
absolutely.
Yeah, really connecting the tissues there for that. And so, to kind of step into his experiences of how can someone absolutely believe in the Empire.
An uncomfortable home life.
I mean, that's a start.
It'll do it.
That'll do it.
Every time. His mom's the worst.
She is.
Those scenes, as uncomfortable as the beach scene was, which I kept thinking of it of like, oh, I need to take that shot of the K2 unit coming up the stairs and match that with like the Terminator theme, because that's the vibe.
Yeah.
But aside from that, like as like uncomfortable as that scene was, I would put it on par as any scene with Cyril's mom.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Oh,
same vibe.
Yeah, it was just uncomfortable.
Ugh.
But yeah, so we put it out there to the masses. Anyone listening, watching, first of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, if you're going to go this far, you might as well tell us what you love as well. So the question is yours. Let us know. You can hit us up on Twitter or leave it in the comments here if you happen to watch this. I do recommend it. There's a lot of beautiful faces on the screen right now. And so
record a manifesto.
Record a manifesto.
Manifestos are not inherently evil.
No,
that's true.
I was waiting to see if someone went there. So I'm glad it was at the end.
I don't know what you're talking about, Chris.
leave it to boot.
I don't know either, I guess.
Thank you guys so much for joining for this chat. I love it. Wasn't as derailed as I thought. We started with Nick Cage, but we recovered. It's okay.
We did.
It made the episode better.
Sure.
I'm in full agreement.
Nick Cage set the seasoning, so to speak, for the rest of the smorgasbord.
Just a little bit of Nick Cage in every episode.
I love y'all, so I'll give it to you. That's true.
Instead of Salt Bay, it's Cage Bay.
Absolutely. There you go.
That's my new name on
Cage
Twitter.
Bay.
Okay, Cage Bay. Instead of salt, what would he be sprinkling?
Ooh.
Garlic, probably, because
depends on the era.
Exactly.
True.
I mean,
cocaine.
I was gonna say, I feel like some form of drug.
Cheddar Goblin cheese product.
The orbs from the missiles in The Rock. I don't know. Oh gosh. Now that's a Cage movie I'm excited to talk about.
Is that the one where they escape Alcatraz?
Yeah.
Did you know that Alcatraz means pelican?
I did. I do. I always will, because you never let me forget it.
I just thought you liked fun facts.
I do. I love you too. So, Goose, you're new to the show, so why don't we start with you? Where can the people find you, and where should they find you? Because you're a wonderful.
Unfortunately, we're everywhere. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Even though I'm dumping Facebook because there's zero engagement there, and the Hive. Even though Hive died as fast as it blossomed. And you can find us on all of those social medias at Triad of the Force. We're also on YouTube video format. You can also youtube.com/Triad of the Force or whatever. You can find us there. So yeah, thankfully not many podcasts are called Triad of the Force. So as many usernames as I can, commandeer, you can find me in those things.
Yeah.
With that. So yeah,
we
talk about the same thing. So if you like this, then you might like more people that kind of look like me talk about that stuff too.
You will like it. It's a very good podcast.
Absolutely. Seconded. I absolutely envy it, because it was I found out very quick. I started with Twitter and I was just like, all right, the Nerdherder cast, we got it. And then I went over to Instagram and it's just like, dang it, there's another one. Only on Instagram for some reason.
It hasn't been active in years.
No, it's one of those things where it's just like, I want to be like, hey, can you delete your account so I can have that, please? But
or else
the only one.
Yes, Highlander the hell
Highlander.
out of it.
Highlander 1 or Highlander 2 though?
Only ever one. Only ever
one.
No,
two rocked my world when I was a child. I'm just
yes. 2 is so ludicrous it loops around and becomes good.
So you would love it.
Probably.
It was my first Clancy Brown movie, actually.
Really? Was it your first Sean Connery experience?
No, because I was raised on James Bond. So
good for you.
Yeah.
Go slap a woman.
Kev, when can we expect that Force Losers content back in our feeds?
Well, I'm happy to announce, I don't know. I still don't know. I don't know.
That's fine.
You had me.
I was did. No, we're working on it. We're working on it. We will be back this year. We will be going to a live format, so that's going to be a thing. It will be happening. So we're working on it as diligently as two less than intelligent, less than handsome men can figure it out.
You're beautiful.
Brad is amazing.
He is the looker of the two of us. Wow. But yeah, we'll be back soon, and when it's ready to go, it's ready to go. And beyond that, you can find me on all the other socials. Where's that? There you are.
There you go.
We're on the Twitter, and I'm on TikTok now, apparently.
Sending videos back and forth with me.
Yes, because sometimes our feeds match up, and it gets ludicrous, and I love it.
Yeah.
Mostly toaster jokes.
Yes, mostly toaster jokes. Like mostly toaster jokes.
You mean bath bomb jokes?
Yeah. Exactly. Spicy bath bombs. God, I made one to a coworker, and I can't say it on the podcast, but it was good. It was good.
I look forward to it.
My new favorite is I need a rope and a depressive tree.
No, I need a rope and a dramatic looking tree.
Dramatic looking tree. There you go. So I'm just waiting for the day to pull that one out in the wrong crowd. But anyway.
Yeah. It doesn't go over well.
So somewhere in the next 350 days, we can definitely expect Force Losers back. Excited about that. Just because we love you guys over there, and coming to us from your new space, your new office, looking good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The
Dreamatorium, as I call it.
There you go. And so obviously we're here now on a new day. We're shooting for Sundays at 8, as long as it's convenient. And so we'll see how that goes. But as long as it lasts, we'll be here talking about all the things we like with the people we like. Next week, because as fate would have it, I'm cursed. Next week,
you're not cursed. You're blessed.
We are talking about Face Off.
We're gonna take your face.
The Nick Cage classic.
Off.
Yes. And so our patrons can expect a commentary of us enjoying that movie.
Me enjoying
and
John's
me being
pain.
there.
Just saying every 15 minutes.
Good movie.
For
a good movie.
And then shortly thereafter, in the months to come
from?
John Woo. Yeah, it'll be public in the far future. But if you just can't wait to hear my agony, you can join our Patreon, and we do appreciate
support the agony.
Our folks that support us and pay for StreamYard, equipment, all of that beautiful stuff. Your questionable financial choices make us a better podcast, and so thank you. And so we'll be back next week with a new lineup of guests and a lot more fun to be had. But in the meantime, do appreciate everyone for stopping by. Again, a big thank you to our guests. You make the show.
Beautiful boys. And
to everyone listening and watching, remember to always stay scruffy.
Wait a minute. This is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.